Yes, sir.
May I proceed?
You may.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Danny Kosack. I'm a trainer at the Red Hawk Animal Sanctuary in Oxford, Ohio.
Now, Mr. Kosack, we've heard a lot about the chimpanzee named Elias. How did you know Elias?
I was his trainer. I worked with him, trained him, played with him, fed him almost every day for 4 years. He was my friend. I miss him.
Now, let me ask you bluntly, what went wrong on the set of Midlands After Dark?
What went wrong is that Alex Grace ignored my guidelines, tried to touch Elias, and scared him into attacking.
Now, let's back up a little bit there. How long have you been working with animals?
23 years. I got my BS in animal science in 1995, and then I worked as an assistant zookeeper at the Cincinnati Zoo for 8 years. Then in 2003, I founded the Midlands Animal Sanctuary and worked there until 2017.
Can you tell us about the Midlands Animal Sanctuary?
Yeah, sure. It was a shelter for all kinds of animals in need of a home. It was mostly exotic types, lions, tigers, ostriches, a chimpanzee, obviously, you name it. Every time we got a new animal, we would build them a habitat, shelter them, and feed them. A lot of the workers, they were volunteers.
How did the sanctuary afford to take care of all these animals?
We were mostly supported by donations and by on-site educational programs that we held at the sanctuary. Sometimes it was difficult to make ends meet until I got the idea of booking some of the animals for TV and movie appearances.
And how did those TV and movie appearances help?
Well, they increased our publicity and visibility to increase donations, all while letting us share our animals with the world and teach about them, but especially for the exotic ones. Some people have lots of misconceptions, and that really helped keep the sanctuary afloat.
And what did these animals do in the appearances?
A lot of the time, I would just show off the animal, talk about them, explain, where they lived, what they were like. But sometimes I train the animals to do simple tricks like nodding or shaking their head or smiling, things like that.
Did you teach Elias any tricks?
Yes, I did.
And how did you teach Elias those tricks?
The method I use, it's an industry standard method. Every trainer I know of uses it, called continuous positive reinforcement, transitioning to fixed ratio positive reinforcement.
And can this method be used on other animals?
It can.
Now,
I use it to train all my other animals.
Let's break that method down a little bit. What exactly is positive reinforcement?
Positive reinforcement just means rewarding the animal when they do something good as opposed to punishing them when they do something bad. It's much more humane than negative reinforcement.
And then what about continuous and fixed ratio?
Continuous means rewarding the animal for every single time that they do a trick. For Elias, the reward was usually pieces of fruit. You do it continuously at first to get the animal interested in the trick, and then over time you transition to a fixed ratio so that they don't expect it every single time. With Elias, I give him a treat every 4th time.
Is this a standard method for training animals?
It is.
Now, when you taught Elias to perform tricks, how then did you prepare him for a stage appearance?
Well, the way that works is that you essentially treat handling a studio environment like its own trick. I took him into a studio environment. I exposed him to things like bright lights, smell of food, laughter, presence of other people, and I trained him to focus on me and ignore distractions using the same methods that I just described. When he ignored the distraction and did something I wanted him to, I rewarded him.
And how much time did you spend preparing him for that environment?
At least 150 hours.
And was that training effective?
Yes, it was. We appeared on 18 TV shows, and 6 or 7 of which had live audiences, as well as 2 short appearances in films.
Objection, Your Honor. Narrative answer may be heard.
Overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
As well as 2 short movie appearances, largely without incident.
What do you mean largely without incident?
There was one incident on a show in 2015 where the host got into a fake argument with Elias, Elias being a chimpanzee. He didn't understand that it was pretend, and it escalated into a startle reaction.
What is a startle reaction?
Best way to explain it is that when a chimpanzee experiences a startle reaction, it means they're in a state of extreme agitation. They become hypersensitive to potential danger.
And aside from doing training, how did you ensure that your animals made safe appearances on shows?
Well, there was a very standard procedure for that. As soon as a booking was confirmed, I sent whatever studio I was working with a 15-point list of guidelines that I wrote myself in order to prepare for the animal's presence there and to know how to interact with it.
Did you follow the same process for the Midlands After Dark appearance?
Of course.
And did Midland Studios adhere to the guidelines?
They did not.
And what did you expect MTS to do to be ready for Elias's visit?
Well, just like every other studio I've ever worked with, I expected them to follow the guidelines. I thought I made it pretty clear they were supposed to do that.
What happened instead?
Well, they ignored the guidelines, they didn't prepare properly, they didn't spread them properly, and most importantly, Alex Grace reached out to touch Elias in direct violation of everything I had told her.
Now, let's move and talk to the actual day of the incident. What happened at the start of Elias's segment?
Well, it started off pretty well. After the introductions, I went and stood slightly off stage where I could, so still within Elias's line of sight. I was making signals to him, he was responding well, him and Alex Grace were doing the back and forth pretty well. Eventually, though, I signaled him to nod, and he jumped up and started screeching and hollering. It was another startle reaction.
So what did you do when he started having this startle reaction?
I told everyone firmly and clearly, without yelling, to stay calm, and I started to slowly move towards him. Before I could get anywhere, Alex Grace reached out to touch Elias.
What happened then?
Well, it triggered his fight or flight response. He was, like I said, he was hypersensitive to threats, and a startle reaction, he perceived the movement as a threat, and it triggered his fight or flight response.
Can you explain what a fight or flight response is?
That's what it sounds like. When faced with a perceived threat, all animals, humans included, have to make a decision of whether to confront the danger or whether they have to flee from it. That's fight or flight. If a chimpanzee believes that they can win in a fight, they'll usually try.
So in this situation, what did Elias do?
He chose to fight. He ran over, I don't know why he chose Chris. He locked onto Chris, ran over, knocked him down, and started attacking him.
What did you do?
I'll be honest, I froze. I never seen Elias that angry before, and it all happened so quickly. He didn't look like himself.
Where did Elias go after the incident?
He ran over to a sound booth on the other side of the studio. I followed after him and held the door shut until the police arrived.
What happened when the police arrived?
They tended to Chris, obviously, and they moved me from the door and went inside, and I heard gunshots. So I suppose that's when they killed him. They didn't try to sedate him or anything, they just shot him there.
Now, Mr. Kosack, is there anything you could have done to prevent this incident?
I wish there was something more I could have done. I thought about it over and over again. Of course, I feel horrible that this happened, but I did everything that I could.
No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
You okay?
May I proceed?
You may.
Good morning. I want to start off by talking about the financial situation at your sanctuary that you used to run.
Okay.
You relied on educational programs to fund your sanctuary,
In part,
and you also relied on media appearances.
to raise publicity to get more donors, primarily.
Right, and donations were another major source of revenue.
Yes.
But unfortunately, you lost several big donors in 2016.
Yes, I did.
And as a result of that, your sanctuary started to run a deficit.
Yes, we were losing money at the time.
Now, your sanctuary had a checking account
We did.
and no other assets.
Well, aside from the value of the sanctuary itself, no.
Approaching opposing counsel with Exhibit 21. Permission to approach the witness with the same.
You may.
Your Honor, would you like a courtesy copy?
Yes, please.
Mr. Kosack, these are the statements from your checking account.
Yes.
And these statements were made for a year.
Yes, they were.
And you receive these statements once a month?
Yes, I did.
Plaintiff offers Exhibit 21 into evidence.
Any objections?
Objection to relevance.
Response?
If I may proffer.
Oh, of course. Sorry.
Mr. Kosack was desperate to get himself onto the show with his chimpanzee because of the financial situation at his sanctuary. He was desperate to get more publicity. And these records indicate, in fact, that his sanctuary was, in fact, facing some difficult financial times.
Response?
Your Honor, whether or not Mr. Kosack was facing financial difficulty does not make any fact in today's case more or less likely. We're here today to argue whether or not Midland's television studio took the proper precautions to have a safe appearance, or whether or not Mr. Kosack properly trained an animal. These expense reports do not make it more or less likely that Mr. Kosack properly trained Elias, and therefore are not relevant in today's case.
May I respond?
Yes.
If I may proffer again.
Of course.
The fact that the sanctuary was facing these difficult financial times makes it more likely that Mr. Kosack would bring his chimpanzee onto the set, regardless of the quality of the training that he provided and how safe it would be. And I'd also like to remind the court that relevance is an extremely low bar.
All right. Very well argued on both sides. I'm going to overrule the objection. Receive Exhibit 21 into evidence. Counsel, you're certainly more than welcome to inquire into these matters on redirect examination if you so choose.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Kosack, I want you to look at those financial records. Now, you ran a deficit for all 12 months. Isn't that right?
The sanctuary did, yes.
And at the end of that period, you were concerned that your sanctuary would have to close if things didn't improve.
Well, actually a couple months before the appearance, things already were starting to improve because of the popularity of the YouTube videos I started doing with Elias. But the general financial situation was still not ideal. No.
So just to be clear, you still continue to lose money,
At the time, yes.
and you desperately needed more publicity.
Well, like I said, I was getting more donors, we were getting more publicity, things were improving relative to the start of the year, but of course more publicity never hurts.
Mr. Kosack, is it your testimony today that the financial situation in your sanctuary was improving over that 12-month span?
Well, no, not over the 12-month span. I'm just saying that they were improving slightly because of the videos and the time before.
Mr. Kosack, just to be clear for the members of the jury, you continue to lose money throughout that 12-month period.
Yes, that is correct.
I want to talk about one way you tried to get your sanctuary a little bit more money.
Okay.
That was by appearing on TV shows.
Yes.
In 2005, you and Elias have appeared on several TV shows now.
18, yes.
And one of those TV shows was Byron Fellow's Safari Trip.
Yes.
And while you were on that show, Elias screamed at the host, Byron Fellows.
Well, Byron Fellows started screaming at him first.
Mr. Kosack, bringing you back to my question, Elias screamed at Byron Fellows, yes or no?
Yes, he had a startle reaction and he was screeching to express that.
And Elias also ended up screeching at the audience.
Yes, he did.
And it took you 15 minutes to calm Elias down.
Yes, chimpanzees are not always super responsive to anyone when they're in a startle reaction, so it takes time, but because no one made any sudden movements, no one tried to interact with Elias, I was able to calm him down.
So just to be clear for the members of the jury, it took you 15 minutes to get Elias to calm down.
Approximately.
I want to move on to another TV show you wanted to appear on for more publicity, Midland's After Dark. You emailed Miss Grace several times asking to appear on the show.
Yes, I did.
In one of those emails, you explained that you needed to appear on this show.
I suppose I did, something like that.
You said that you'd be very interested in coming on to her show.
Yes, the sanctuary, we really wanted more publicity.
You explained that that would be great for her ratings,
Yeah, I thought I could.
but that the publicity would be even greater for you.
Yes.
Now, in another email, you stressed that getting Elias onto Midland's After Dark would literally save your sanctuary. Isn't that right?
Well, I know that's what I said in the email, but I will admit that I was exaggerating a bit at the time. I wanted the spot and I wanted the publicity.
Mr. Kosack, just to be clear, you wrote that bringing Elias onto Midlands After Dark would literally save your sanctuary, yes or no?
I said that appearing on the show, but I'm not sure if I specifically said Elias, but yes.
And you also wrote that appearing on Midlands After Dark would literally save your career.
Again, I was exaggerating a bit to, as a persuasion tactic, I suppose, but yes, I believe that's what I wrote in the email.
I want to move on and discuss how you train Elias for this appearance.
Okay.
You normally train Elias using verbal commands, isn't that right?
Yes.
But you trained Elias using hand signals for this appearance.
Yes.
And you rewarded Elias every time he responded to your hand signals.
Yes.
And you wanted to transition to a system where you would only reward Elias a certain number of times after he responded.
Yes, ideally I would have.
And you wanted to make that transition in June.
Actually, with the schedule that I had started with, I was planning on transitioning in early July.
My apologies. So you want to make that transition in July, yes?
Yes.
But you never actually transitioned to rewarding Elias a certain number of times after he responded to a hand signal.
Well, specifically to hand signals, no, but I should mention that all of these tricks were things that he already knew how to do. It was only the hand signals.
Mr. Kosack, bringing you back to my question, you never transitioned to rewarding Elias only a certain number of times after he responded to a hand signal, yes or no?
Yes.
And you had concern weeks before the show that you wouldn't be able to make that transition.
No, not really. Oh, well, I was not concerned about the fact that I would not make the transition, but I was aware that I probably would not be able to.
But you did offer to bring other animals onto the show because you were concerned that you wouldn't make that transition. Yes?
No, not because of that. I mean, Elias, like I said, with the YouTube videos, Elias was our most famous star, and I thought that since I had the booking, I could try to bring other animals on.
Mr. Kosack, is it your testimony that you were not concerned? That you offered to offer other animals because you were not concerned on the show? That you wouldn't finish the training before going on the show?
Well, like I said, ideally I would have completed the training because there were a couple of minor movements that we didn't quite finish, but I mean that was not my primary reason for offering another animal.
But you were concerned, and that was one reason why you offered to bring another animal, yes or no?
I mean, a little bit.
So you never ended up informing Alex Grace about that concern. Is that correct?
I don't believe so.
Don't you think that you should have told Alex Grace that you might not have been able to complete the training?
Well, as I said, the training was, in terms of performing the trick, mostly complete. And I assumed that Alex Grace wasn't particularly concerned with or knew anything about chimpanzee training schedules.
All right, I want to move on to discuss what happened once you got onto the set of Midlands After Dark. Well, when you got there, Elias was screaming. Yes?
No, not at the start.
Well, eventually, once you got there, Elias was screaming.
Once we were in the dressing room and I put him back in his cage, yes, he began screeching.
And Elias was very upset.
He was pretty upset, yes, or more than normally.
And Elias even scratched you. Isn't that right?
Yeah, he scratched me in my arm a bit, but that's not that abnormal. Animal cats do that.
Then Alex Grace asked you about those scratches,
Yeah, she did.
but you shrugged it off.
Yeah, that's not that important. Animals do that sometimes.
So you never informed Alex Grace that your animal scratched you.
Well, she saw it right there. I didn't explain it to her. It was right there on my arm.
But you never told her that those scratches were from Elias. Is that correct?
No, I don't think I explicitly said so.
Don't you think you should have told Alex Grace that those scratch marks came from your animal?
I thought it was pretty apparent since I was standing right next to him and there were fresh scratches.
All right, I want to talk about what happened at rehearsal after Elias leaped out of his seat. Elias ended up running straight towards Chris Villafana. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's what it seemed like.
He knocked Chris over
Yes.
and started repeatedly hitting him in the head.
Yes.
And while that was happening, you froze.
Yes, it was very sudden. I'd never seen him like that before. It happened very quickly. I froze.
And it took you 10 minutes, or 10 seconds to realize what was happening.
Yes, something like 10 seconds.
Mr. White, can you please time for me 10 seconds?
Done.
So it took you that long before you reacted.
Yes, I froze. It was very sudden. I didn't expect it.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kosack. Nothing further.
Any redirect?
Brief redirect, Your Honor. Mr. Kosack, how long have you been bringing animals onto TV appearances?
A while. I don't remember exactly what year it started, but I've been training animals for 15 years.
And is the process that you go through to train animals to be ready for TV always the same?
Yeah, I use the same general method or schedule.
Does that process change based on the finances of your sanctuary?
It does not.
And was Elias ready to appear on Midlands After Dark?
Yes, he was.
No further questions.
Any recross?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Witness is excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Any further witnesses for the defense?